do a lot of on-the-job PD with the classroom teachers. So they go on what we like to call learning journeys with teachers. So they bring them resources, they talk with them about what they want to work development within their buildings, but also district-wide. Obviously extremely collaborative. We've had a lot of cross-school collaborations too with the introduction of the coaches, where classroom teachers are able to go visit, have conversations about improving students are experiencing. We do tons of professional development. We always have lots of literacy sessions going on. But this year, we've really spent a lot of time making sure that it is sustained, deep, and focused. So giving teachers an opportunity to try to say what they're working on, and then really invest in it and have multiple opportunities to try it out and come back and talk about how it's been working and try it out again, come back and talk about it. Each time improving their practice and feeling more confident in what's going on in their classroom. And again, we consider the cross-school relationships part of that professional development as well, because they're learning from each other. We have a lot of very experienced teachers in our district, and so giving them the opportunity to really connect with each other has been very meaningful to them. And then I include WIFI on this slide because we do a lot of partnership work with them, and it enables us to give opportunities to a lot of large groups of teachers when we have people who are interested in certain materials or programs or approaches, and they want to learn more about it. WIFI has been really, really generous to us, particularly recently with this Readers Workshop professional development that we brought from Teachers College Columbia last year. So we have a lot of exciting things going on. It's just been really inspiring, motivating, and our teachers have a lot of momentum right now in reading instruction particularly, but all around.
Thank you. So Carolyn Plasky, I'm going to go over because I think I have to hit some of your screens by hand, is our middle school. We have, which I have to say, it's a small stipend because we have a shared kind of leadership role at the middle school for our ELA, and Carolyn and Katie have been particularly instrumental in trying to bridge that gap. Is with our curriculum work, we really focus on our vertical. We know we hear all the time from the high school, the middle school didn't do this, they're not prepared for this, and then for the middle school, the elementary didn't do this, they're not prepared. So they've spent a lot of time really trying to bridge that and work together so there isn't this kind of falling off of the cliff after elementary and off they go to middle school. So they've worked nicely together on that. So just tell me which one of the links you want me to click on.
We probably won't go to all of them. Okay. So thank you for having me. So I'm Carolyn. I also teach 8th grade at McCall, so I'm in the classroom 5 periods a day as well. So similar to elementary, we started by prioritizing and color coding our standards for grades 6 through 8. To start with, that was an independent, each grade worked on their own, and then we worked collaboratively to see where we overlapped, where there were enormous jumps, and to see if there were reasons why for that. So sometimes in an earlier grade, you would have, mastered a skill only to get to 8th grade and drop it back down to not mastering it. And often there's a reason for that. For example, when you're looking at perspective taking, by 7th grade, students have mastered point of view, but then when you add irony back in 8th grade, that makes it a lot more difficult. So you drop it back down to we've got to spend some more time on this. So just to see what the reasons were for those. Similarly, we worked vertically with grades 5 and grades 9. So that's still a work in progress. We've been working for the past 2 years with grade 5 with both Katie as well as the 5th grade curriculum leader. And then we worked last year with grade 9. They're a little bit behind us. And we're working actually with them next Thursday as well to do the same process that we did internally between each grade to see what it looks like as a child progresses, grades 5 through 9. Grade 8 has gone a little bit deeper with their curriculum work. So for 2 summers, they worked on developing curriculum, and their year is now divided into 3 specific units. That doesn't mean they're done. Curriculum work is never done, and we continue to revise that all the time. But what's nice about the 3 curriculum units is that we were able to establish for each unit, for each section of the year, which of those standards do we really, really want to focus on. And then getting back to one of the earlier slides, just because it's one of the 50 standards doesn't mean that it's important to us at each point in the year. So some of those standards you're going to see all 3 units. Some of them you might only see once, and then some of them, if they've already mastered, you might touch on it, but you actually might never assess it because you know that they're all there. What's also nice is that there's not just one pathway through each of those units. So even though we have pages and pages of unit material, one teacher would never use every single resource in it. You would pick a pathway. There are multiple pathways of teaching the same exact standards. And the teacher makes that decision based on their own interests and talents and also based on the needs of the children in that room. So the first item that each unit has are a list of common tasks. And those are tasks that the group of teachers involved in that particular year have decided are very important to assess, and that everyone, regardless of the teacher that you have that year, regardless of the pathway that that teacher has chosen to go through there, they will make sure that they do this particular assignment. Now, within that assignment, there's still a lot of choices, but that skill is determined important enough that everyone in the 8th grade should be able to do it. Similarly, one thing that allows teachers to do is then do what's called range finding or calibrating, which means that for that single assignment that everyone has committed to, each teacher can then look at samples from each score point across the grade and determine, are we really looking for the same thing? You don't want a child who gets one teacher to be looking for one thing and then a different teacher's looking for something completely different. So that enables us to actually have tools to accomplish that and use that as our own data as we make decisions moving forward with curriculum. There are also a lot of resources and linked materials. So for example, a new teacher could come in and is not just given a stack of books, but actually has pathways that they can use and resources that are readily available to them. So it's not a prescriptive curriculum. There are many different ways of doing a particular assignment, but it's descriptive. So if someone does need a ready-to-go lesson, it's there for them and provided for them. There's also resources for scaffolding for children who are not ready to access the curriculum where the unit is traditionally written, and there's also opportunities for enrichment as well. So here, this is the second unit for grade 8, and so each unit has goals. It has identified standards and benchmarks for each unit. And then if you keep scrolling.
So just to let you know, when we do our power standards in district, which are ones that we expect every student to really know and be able to do, are our green standards across all content areas. So those are the ones that are, they can't leave Carolyn's room without it.
Right.
And our yellow are, those are really important, and we're really working on those, and everyone has some level of mastery, but it may not be to the depth of our green power standards that we're expecting from everyone. Sorry, tell me when to stop, Carolyn.
There's red too.
Yes.
Red we don't deal with.
You may or may not get to it. Some kids may or may not get to it, but we realize the state standards, as you can see from this many pages as we've gone through, are sometimes unrealistic in everything that we can expect from our students.
And so the green is really a commitment to the year that's to come. So, an 8th grade teacher is saying to the 9th grade teachers, I am guaranteeing you that your children, when they reach you, will have these particular skills. So we also have committed to enduring understandings and essential questions, which are the same regardless of the teacher that you have. And then underneath that is the list of common tasks of assignments that everyone in the grade will do, regardless of their particular pathway through there. Our assessments do include both traditional assessments as well as performance-based assessments. So I'm happy to tell you that in the 8th grade curriculum, there's not one multiple choice test that is part of that. We do traditional assessment in terms of essay writing. Teaching of writing is probably the most important thing that we do. However, when you really look at assessing a child's reading, traditionally the most common way of assessing reading was looking at writing. And while for the vast majority of children that's not a problem, there are also kids who are really strong readers who are unable to exhibit that skill through writing. So that's where performance-based assessment comes in really, really well. So we've done things like having children write grant proposals for a civil rights assignment and give a presentation making a proposal to someone. We have them compose and perform blues songs to assess theme in a novel. Or we have them write a debate and participate in a debate to teach argumentation. We also have them do watercolor paintings of imagery, and we have them develop museum artifacts for research projects for the Holocaust, or develop fact pages, again, for research. So those are all real world skills. Not many of us are asked to write essays on a daily basis as adults. So these are just alternative methods really of assessing the same information, but really being more authentic with what's being asked for in the real world. And then lastly, we have rubrics, which allow us to make sure that we know what we're assessing before the children even get the assignment. And we also have models. So we have models for us as teachers to know what we're looking for, and then models for our students as well. If you want to go back to the slide, the original slide, that'd be good.
Which I may need.
Thank you. Then the next bullet point, we just have a text list, which might not seem all that intricate, but it's a list of all the texts, not only full-length works, but short stories, videos, poetry, essays, articles, that continues to evolve, but it gives each teacher a list of resources that have already been taught before and have been proven to assess those particular standards for that unit. And then moving back to the slide, so that was all just 8th grade. Moving on, the teaching of writing progression. Click there. So our latest professional day in September, all 3 grades got together and looked at what writing looks like as a child progresses for grades 6 through 8. So you can see its steps, so we build upon it. That doesn't mean that when you're in 8th grade you abandon what happened in 6th. You're going deeper with it, and then we add additional skills. Most of us teach the same writing program of Empower, and then we just build upon that as our students need it. And then the last bullet point, we also 2 years ago, English Language Arts worked with social studies and technology and the school librarian to develop just teaching of citations to make sure that that was consistent across the school, especially now that everyone is using the web for internet research. Everything needs to be cited, and we just wanted to make sure that the kids were getting a consistent methodology for using that. That's it.
This will be the check. We'll see if it'll still work now that I had to sign out of you free things. I need to sign back in. Okay. So one of the things that you had asked us for is budget implications as we're talking about curriculum. So at the end of each of our areas, we'll just talk a little bit about what we see coming. So good news for ELA, not as expensive as some of the other areas, except for Katie would kill me if I didn't say, books, we need more books. So professional development, obviously, for each of these pieces as we go. We're lucky, like Katie said, we have some great partnerships with WIFI. We bring in some of the best to really teach our teachers. Lucy Calkins, very expensive. Yeah. So we could never do that if they didn't support us. So if you remember, we got some grants for them for last summer for Whole Week Institutes, and they also have committed some money for this upcoming summer too to partner with us on that. And then reading materials, especially as we're starting to look around more nonfiction and different genres to do, and social emotional, multicultural. So we recognize we don't always have a lot of these books to expose our students to the things we really want them to. And then even at the middle school, some of the trying to do, I know some people are trying to do literacy circles or different reading groups, so sometimes that means that we need to be able to buy more, and we don't mean textbooks, we mean more of the paperbacks, but in the bound fashion, so they last more than a year or two. So those are really the biggest budget implications out of those pieces. Rita, would you mind signing back in? Sorry, once we sent it to Frida to do it, I never realized we need to give her permission to access the files, so. Oh, hold on.
It looks like it.
It looks like it remembered your password. How helpful. Thank you. Okay. Captain Dwyer, who you have all met and seen before, our very own Miss Frizzle.
Sort of, right? I'm just gonna stand up because I think better standing. So thank you so much for having me. This is my second year doing this, and We do have new science standards, and we're in our second year of starting to implement them, and it is a process. Which takes time and takes a lot of commitment on all levels. So my big message when we're thinking about curriculum is that science is not something that children study. It's not a subject that we learn about in school. It is something that we do. So that whole thing of keeping our goal in mind, the future, where do we want our kids going in the future? That's the way I think about curriculum. Where do we want them to end up? And that's actually in the standards. The standards have changed, and it's not just a shifting of we want them to learn this set of facts here and a different grade level. Really the big shift is about this aspect of like we want them to actually develop the skills to be scientists. We want them to be scientists. That's the shift. And it's a big shift, and it's a huge shift for teachers. It's going to be a big shift for kids, and it's great though. So it's a great shift in the standards. It's very much, it's explicit in the standards now that what it's all about is that we understand phenomena in the natural world so that we can do something about it. So we can change the world or change our practices in the world. That's now in our science standards. We have human impact standards, which is phenomenal. It's great. It was always in there, but now it's explicit in there. So these are just some examples of where we want to go with our students, because where we're going is shaping what we're doing right now. In 4th grade, we want kids to actually be able to do something like capture light energy from the sun, hold it in a capacitor or a battery or some kind of storage device, and transform it into something like electrical energy or another form of energy. We want them to learn what those things mean by actually doing it. We want them to be able to make something that's solar powered when they're in 4th grade. In 5th grade, we want to take on, and these are in the standards, things like water filtration, pollutants, both industrial and agricultural. We want them designing water filters. They design a water filter that filters out pollutants. We want them coming up with solutions to agricultural runoff. We want them comparing and designing different types of composters to see what's most actually effective. We want them to actually do those things. This is something that's very new for us, is information transfer at an earlier age. It's a very interesting set of standards. When you first look at it, it looks like we want kids to code. We do want kids to code, but that's not, we don't want them just to code because it's fun and it's a good thing to do and you're gonna get a job if you can code. Actually, where we're going with that is we want kids to understand how you take a signal, you encode information, you transmit it, and then you decode it at the other end, and hopefully you get something back. That is the way information moves in our society. That is the way all communication works in our society, whether it's through sound, through our phones, whether it's through pixels, through images, and the rest of it. And we actually want them to start learning about that at an early age so that they can actually help build those networks. That is also the way we know everything we know about things that are beyond our ability to observe, about outer space, about our universe expanding. So that's really where we're going with that. And it starts in 1st grade with learning how to send a signal in a very simple way. But again, we don't want them to learn about it. We want them to actually do it. So these are all the things, these are the kinds of examples of where we want to go with our curriculum and what we're trying to design our curriculum to do. Is there a clicker here to the next one? Again, looking to the future, I just went to a conference with this, there's a chemist from UMass that was one of the keynote speakers, and it was completely fascinating. So he's UMass chemist. What they're doing is they're combating antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which we know is like a huge problem. If you take 5 courses of all of our antibiotics right now, after the 5th course, you are done. That will no longer work for you in a row. So there is no solution, and they're projecting that in 50 or 60 years, if we don't solve this problem, I mean, we're talking huge amounts of infection that we will not be able to combat. It is a serious, we know this, it is a very serious problem. So what they're doing is he's working with his college students, and they are creating these sponges where they basically create a sponge that can carry an essential oil that is non-toxic to human cells, peppermint oil, thyme oil, and these sponges are able to break through the cell walls of bacteria and carry the essential oils in and destroy these harmful bacterial cells. It's completely fascinating. And at the end of his presentation, he showed pictures of his college students who are actually working in the labs, who are actually developing all these and coming up with some of the ideas. The time oil came from one of his college students. Some of this stuff is coming. And he thanked all the teachers there, including the elementary teachers, because he was saying, these are your kids that are in my lab that are doing this work. And that's how I see our science curriculum. We want our kids from kindergarten on doing this kind of work, gaining these kinds of skills so they can do this, if that's what they're interested in. If they are interested in going forward in science, if that's what they love. So the process for us, like I said, this is only our second year. All the research, like Jen was saying, shows, and not just, we have a lot of research from the corporate world, like Google, which is really good research showing what it takes to make a change. We also have lots of research from academic sources talking about what it takes to actually make a change like this, how long it takes, what kind of resources it takes, what you have to do. And some of the things that have stood out to us, collaboration is huge. So from the get-go, we've had teachers, before we started adopting the standards, we had teachers actively involved in the cross-district science mapping group. We have teachers involved in the NCEIA group, as was said. This is a group of teachers from across the state, administrators from across the state, who are working to actually develop new curriculum together, collaborating. I collaborate with other science, technology, engineering teachers in a new group that DESE has formed that is kind of blossoming. They had to get a new space because there's so many people who want to be involved. We collaborate with people who work in science centers in various districts around Massachusetts. So I meet with them, we exchange ideas, we try to take the best. We try to give each other feedback. And this is something that we really need to do in order to design that phenomenon and inquiry-based curriculum. You can't just buy it out of a box. You do have to buy things to make it happen. There are serious budget implications. That's going. But you cannot open a box and have this all happen. And that is tough. And part of this process is winning all of our teachers. I am a teacher. I was a 5th grade teacher for years at Ambrose. We have to win a core team of people who have a shared vision and who are committed to this and who really want to do that. And there's no way around that. That is essential. It is like really first step is to win that group of people. And that's a commitment as well, because we have to have quality professional development, just like in literacy, and we have to actually have opportunities, which we are developing, and people have been great about that, to actually get teacher leadership, developing new curriculum, modeling for one another, testing things out with children, getting our feedback so that we can then go back and revise it and make it better. We said we had a very ambitious plan. We said in 3 years we're going to try and get the core of this curriculum down. That is extremely ambitious for our district like ours. No other district is trying to do that. We'll do the best we can. You know what I mean? Like you said, the plane is in the air. So let's go for it, but let's never lose sight of where we want to go. That's what's important to me. Let's never just say, okay, let's just open the box. Let's order the cheapest thing. Let's do it this way. We have to try to keep in mind where we're going as we do it. And that's it until budget.
And again, part of as we're doing all of our work, we're trying to move vertically at the same time too. So our middle school has been doing, and Catherine spends a lot of time too with the 6th grade teachers, which is awesome, talking about that 5th to 6th move. And actually our curriculum person for science at the middle school is Mary Beth Damari, so she's a 6th grade teacher, so it's great when they work together. That also does the 6th grade, like Carolyn, meeting with Katie. So as you know, last year, one of the things you approved that came before you was moving away from that silo approach, kind of with the science like we used to do, if you studied biology and chemistry and those pieces. And at the middle school for now, really starting to put those together. That's what the new standards has, and that's what they say really as we talk about a spiral for our students to revisit these things. So one of the things that's been really cool is we've tried to build into curriculum, and something we originally were talking about with technology that we're seeing as we're doing through the curriculum process now is having some people pilot the non-textbook approach. So right now we have the 6th grade team that may use pieces from some textbooks that they had from before, but it certainly is not a textbook driven. They do a lot of hands-on and inquiry based. They use a lot of open source. So the consortium that Catherine mentioned that we'll talk a little bit about, we're also starting now with social studies with the new standards. what's so cool about that consortium work is because you have so many districts working together, you can't be textbook bound because everybody might use a different textbook. So in those consortiums, all the materials they're developing are open source, which is so powerful because there's so much more that's current and really readily and accessible to all of our students. So we have teachers doing that. And also at the middle school, we have some people piloting a new software, talking about, do we have a software as a supplement rather than a textbook? These are some of the things the middle school teachers shared back. One of the problems with traditional textbooks, the reading levels might be too advanced for some, not, challenging enough for others. And again, the whole outdated approach that sometimes came along, because as you well know, we don't replace textbooks very often. So we have many that are more than a decade old. And one of their concerns out of the textbooks, which was great, was that it was too low level on Bloom's taxonomy. It was too fact-based, read this stuff, answer the questions at the end, instead of really getting them to think and to apply their learning. And this is a very thoughtful thing I thought that came from this group. They felt like students were really mastering the skill of skimming for the answer. Mm-hmm. So people weren't reading for learning, they were reading to find the answer, to be able to do the answer at the end. And the interactions that are lacking when you move to the textbook model. So this is one of the things that the middle school's really been trying. And last year was our 6th grade moving with the new standards and really working on that. And our 7th grade is working on it now. So that's something that we really see building over the next few years too. Very little work per se done at the high school with science. We're just kind of starting there as we do our vertical process. One cool thing that happened this year is we said our pathway, we've always had a very traditional pathway for our students. You enter, you do biology, then you do chemistry, so one of the cool things that we said this year is that pathway isn't for everyone. And as we talk about our beacons and individual pathways, we need to loosen up our philosophy a little bit. And our alignment, one of the things we'll need to work on at the high school, our alignment across disciplines doesn't always make sense. Mm-hmm. So what you're expected to do in chemistry, if you haven't had certain math courses yet, that doesn't make sense for you. So we were setting up pathways that fail the students. The students aren't failing the area, we're failing them with our pathways. So we did a shift this year where we have some sophomores, for the first time ever, they're starting sophomore year with marine science while they're maybe doing more shoring up with their math skills so that they can move on to chemistry in their junior year. And also really starting to talk about, as you've heard about NEASC, we're in the process at the high school, and one of the great things about NEASC is it's really saying, what are the skills you're applying? What are the 21st century skills? What are you working on with these things? So that's something that we'll be working on with the high school, with the science department, and they, much like Carolyn was talking about with the English, they're just starting to work on prioritizing their standards too. What are the power standards? We have to get out of, at the secondary level, the mindset of we need to cover the chapters of the book. Mm-hmm. I always joke about the banned word wall in my head, which I'm not so shy about sharing. Cover should be one of our banned words, because that just is perpetuating week 1 is chapter 1, week 2 is chapter 2, and getting out of that and saying what are the skills that they really need, and how do we make sure that we don't just go through the textbook and that they're really able to do something, like Catherine said, with those skills. So, Catherine, you want to talk about the first bullets about the budget implications?
Sure. So I think I already mentioned the professional development is key. Like teacher leadership in this is key. As the teachers, it's teachers who teach kids. Teachers teach kids, and other kids teach kids, but led by a teacher. So that is very important. We can't forget about that. I also think, quality from the start. There are many districts, because I talk to a lot of people in a lot of districts, there are many districts that are trying to skip steps so they can implement the standards immediately. And they're trying to do it low cost, but they're also just trying to get it out there. Because teachers are like, what do you want me to teach, right? What am I supposed to use to teach this? You can't just teach a standard, you have to have something. So, or develop something. And so there's districts that have made a choice to go with something inexpensive, something like one of the products is called STEM Scopes. The problem with that, it's not that it's bad quality, but it's inexpensive for a reason, and if you get your whole group of teachers over to STEM Scopes, which is not the best curriculum in the world, then you're going to have to try to shift those people again when you decide on something better. That's not a great way to do it. that is hard. Once people have already changed and adopted something new, to then ask them to change again. So we'd really rather start with like high quality from the start. And it is hard because, like I said, teachers feel responsible for their students. They don't want to pass them on to the next grade without having taught them what they're expected to know. But you just can't short circuit this. You can't leap over stuff. So just to give people a sense of what it costs to go with something like a quality hands-on kit. So, for example, Carolina, huge science company, widely seen as good materials. Hands-on meaning that the kids, the materials that they've developed are aligned with the new standards. Most of the companies are finishing that process right now. If you were to teach, there's basically three major fields of science. So the three major strands. If you were to buy a kit, one kit for each of those three major standards for K through 5, this is just for K through 5, it would cost from Carolina, the average cost of Carolina's kits, $224,000, and that would include enough materials to last for 3 classrooms for 3 years if you basically spread it out that way. So that just gives a sense of what the company, that's a price tag put on by the company. You can do a lot of that stuff yourself. That's what I do. I'm not a huge. I was laughing. I was doing a PD the other day, and I showed them a picture. I think it's Carolina, or maybe it's Delta, sells this product, which is a plastic aquarium with a piece of rotten log in it, and it's $46, and it's this big. They guarantee that there are 5 living things in there. And I'm like, I picked one up off the ground, and I can guarantee you 5 living things, and they're in here right now. So, some of this stuff is like...
There's bugs in the building.
Yes.
Fabulous.
They have a cover. They have a cover there. So it's... So, some of that is the companies are obviously making a profit off this stuff. But the truth is that even if you make it yourself, you got to think about that. We have 110 elementary classrooms. To create kits, to make materials, even if we do it a cheaper way, which is what we're trying to do, that's a lot of materials. That's a lot of kits to put together. So, I think that what most good districts are doing, districts that actually teach good science, is a combination. So they combine some things that are very difficult, like the energy unit I mentioned for 4th grade. You gotta, we're not gonna be building the solar panels. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. You can, and people do. Any volunteers? No, people do. That is actually a school unit. But what we're trying to get is transformation. So, you do have to have some basic equipment if you want kids to actually be able to do things. Of course, I can go and pick up a bunch of that, although the Conservation Commission at some point is going to get annoyed that I'm picking up so much stuff off the ground. But, at a certain point, we have to...
part of the filming out.
we have to put some resources in as well.
And at the middle and high school, as we start to move and work with this curriculum, we'll also need to move with some hands-on materials there, and also possibly software. As we're not putting in for textbooks, they may need support with software as we go. So all of that currently, just to talk about budget implications, all of that currently has been just coming out of, we write some grants, and again, we have some great partners that have supported us on some of our materials, but mostly it's coming out of the PD accounts, which is just less money to go to PD. So we have to come up with a longer term plan on how to be able to support, and it can't be Catherine doing all 110 classrooms, as much as she loves that. All right, so one of the things, and this is very interesting, so just to take a moment to tie back to what will be coming on another budget implication, is a lot of this work, the teachers have been phenomenal, and we have some more teacher leader roles, so thank you for the stipends we've been able to put in the budget for that. But truly, a lot of this has happened, and a lot of this work is done because of these positions. And what's been really powerful is having somebody dedicated to moving this and growing this and helping people put this in place. So as it was funny, because originally when we asked for Catherine's position, which has been phenomenal, we talked about it being a STEM, and originally we were thinking the focus would be on math first. And then the new science standards came, and we said, we got to shift to science first. So it's really, we've been trying to form a partnership to do these pieces. So also Catherine and Lori and many other leadership positions have been working on trying to just start more on the math piece. So we've done the same with really prioritizing the standards and working with everyone to try to do that horizontal and vertical alignment for our power standards and what we want every student to know and be able to do. But as you've heard and hope you know by now, the real work is in the doing of lots of the other pieces. So Lori's taken on doing some of the PD around this. So she's going to talk a little bit about her new very trendy hashtag, Rethinking Math.
So in my role as human resources, our most valuable resources are the teachers. So just trying to always find different ways to connect with them, to see the great things that they're doing, the resources that they need, and just getting them to get the good word out, because there are great things going on in the classroom. So how lucky I feel to be able to work on this with the elementary teachers, because as we were digging into the standards and looking at what we wanted all kids to know and be able to do, it really got us thinking about, well, how are we doing it? And there's so much research out there that we just need to hit pause, take a look at and reflect on and see what that looks like in our classrooms. And to be honest, at the elementary level, we knock it out of the park with literacy, and that begins in college and it goes all the way through our many professional development opportunities that we have in teaching. As elementary teachers, we're jack of all trades and really masters of none, but that's the beauty of elementary. And I feel like what Jen was saying, the difference that these two have made in the short amount of time that they've been here for our kids and the experiences that they're having has been phenomenal. So really, in thinking about math, we know that there's this mindset and it's very fixed. There are many people out there who believe I'm good at math and I'm not good at math. And in our society, it's okay to say, I'm not really good at math, or can't help my kid when I'm not. So we got to debunk that. How do we go about doing that? Well, we have to dive into that research. What is it telling us? Well, it's telling us a lot that we already know. We have girls out there that are really anxious about math, and that really ramps up as they go into middle school and high school. And that really deters them to go into any kind of math kind of field when it comes to colleges. We know that overall in just international, not just Winchester, but at U.S. as a whole, our math practices aren't holding up to what the rest of the world is doing. And we think about that and what we have access to, we got to do something about that. And it starts with what we do within our classrooms. So what we've thought about is our hashtag is, or I should say, our guiding principle as educators is, what do we want, or how can we get our kids to be thinking and behaving like real mathematicians? And as that is our overarching goal. And as Jen said, there are many that are ready and are eager to, focus on this. And as a result, some great things are happening, so that we are taking a look and being very honest and candid about what this looks like in our classroom. What are the benefits of everyday math? What are the gaps in everyday math? And how can we best fill that? And thinking again about all of the great things that are going on, because when you go into the classroom, you're seeing young mathematicians very hard at work. And we've got to get those teachers out and ready to share and their successes, their challenges, and also their mistakes, because it's from those that we learn from each other. So it's finding opportunity to do that and making math a priority, because everyday math has been in place for a long while. I think we've become very complacent, and again, not because we're lazy, people don't have good intentions. It's got good stuff. However, it doesn't align right now to what we want all kids to know and be able to do in grades K through 5. So it's on us to really think about what we're doing in the class, how we're promoting positive mindsets, so that every kid, K through 12, feels like I'm a mathematician. And fast isn't smart. And getting the research out there to teachers, these time tests are really very harmful to our kids.
and why, and what are the alternatives. And to parents, this is how you can help out at home. These are the kinds of questions you can be asking. These are the experiences our kids need to feel like confident mathematicians that we know that they can be. And we need to start getting them to believe that. So how do we do that? As you know, we take a look at the standards, we identify what they are, and then we think about how are we going to assess that? And we really have to move beyond that pencil, paper, only one way to do it. And we have to make sure that every single kid in that classroom is experiencing the same. Because whether you're feeling confident or overly confident or not confident enough, every single person in there has something to share. And we need to get those who think, fast is smart to slow down and really listen to the kid beside them. Because we know that real mathematicians collaborate, they're able to share their thinking, and they've got many different ways to go about solving different problems in any given situation. And we've got to create more experiences like that. So we're putting the pause on and getting more people thinking about how it is they're assessed and giving them permission to not feel like they have to cover that everyday math program because it's too much. And our kids are not being those critical, deep-thinking mathematicians that we want them to be. So it does come down to professional development. We need more time so that educators can come together. On Tuesday, we had a big group, and they were excited to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they're eager to do the next thing, to get together again. We're going to be having study groups, but I feel like, look at the energy, the passion. You see it, right? And you feel that. What that would look like if we had that person at the elementary level who could focus on this math and coach and just take to these teachers who are ready to their next level of excellence. It will make a big difference for all of our students. So again, I'm thankful for the experience. I'm excited at the prospect of where we can go with this. And I should say, I think I've hit on everything, but one important thing, it's our messaging to all of you as well and to the parents of the students in our classroom. We have to make sure that we're prioritizing correctly and we're giving you the right message. So we're taking a look at how our report cards look and what we're measuring at each of the grade levels, and we've got to make those mathematical practices, those habits of minds of mathematicians, being persistent, using your resources, being able to explain, critical. We want to make those front and center versus the facts.
And at the middle and high school for math, we've really just been kind of getting going on those pieces. So the middle school has gone through a draft of prioritizing their standards and talking about what will be our power standards and what new models and approaches could we use. And at the high school, we did a nice change this past year with them around, instead of it being the set algebra and the set geometry class, they now have that integrated class at grade 9, and we'll have upcoming grade 10 changes based on that too. And also at the middle school, the team has done a nice job of trying to pilot some software too and trying to get away from just that textbook-driven mindset. So we're kind of in process on those things. So our budget implications really about math are about continuing on our curriculum work, really wanting to focus on that rethinking math work at the elementary level and really creating those authentic assessments. And it's been so cool. We actually had for the leadership team during our CIA meeting for all evaluators in the district, we had different groups of teachers showing what they've been doing with the performance-based assessments, and it was so cool. One of the presentations from some elementary teachers around math was they were actually going to do a totally different project, and they had surveyed the kids to ask their feelings and what they liked and didn't like, and what was so concerning to them was how many kids said they didn't like math. And that just made them so sad that they built this thing around doing area and perimeter with the coding with the cars, and the students got really excited. And their post-survey results, again, and not just measuring ourselves on tests all the time, not only could the kids do this assessment and apply those skills, but what they said they felt about math afterwards and how powerful that change was of that shift in mindset. So we want to do more with materials to support that hands-on math, and again, get away from that math worksheet as your way to show your learning. Possibly software as we're piloting and seeing where we go with that. And our big ask, as we promised was coming, is we have this STEM, and again, we don't want this silo of this person really around math, but having that emphasis on that math coach that works with the rest of the team. So like Katie and Catherine, and even now with the service learning coordinator, Anne Marie, like they're all working together. They're planning there. We have our elementary social emotional coach, Stacy, which you'll hear about during the wellness curriculum update. Like they're all integrating things and doing pieces together. So it's very much a cross all of these pieces together as we move forward with, again, the same vision. Back to our beginning slides, the same vision should be driving everyone's curriculum, no matter what it is, that same vision of where we want our students to be at the end. So we know this has been long, so as we're wrapping up, things we think are really important, and this is part of our Go Slow to Go Fast, is, you know, how we walk the walk, how we do this process with teachers, and really modeling the collaboration and working together in district, but also with other districts, getting people involved with consortiums. Our hashtag learning is messy. I think what was so powerful after Tuesday's PD is we had a ton of people who sent out follow-up things to their teams that they had met with during their PD, saying things like, oh, I feel like we might not have gotten to this piece yet, like, and this is just part of the process, and as we're all learning, it's messy, and maybe we didn't do this yet, or maybe we need to focus on this instead of that perfect lesson plan that's delivered, that's more like a set and get versus this authentic learning. Like I mentioned, the open source units, trying to get away from being textbook driven, going deeper, taking that time. That's part of our making our power standards. It's okay to let go of some of the standards, but they have to be consistent so our students don't have gaps. So we have to say we cannot do everything that the DESE wants us to do. It's not realistic to our students, and it's just superficial if we do. We want that deep learning. Inclusive, letting everyone be part of things. It would be quicker and less messy not to have so many people involved, but it's real learning, and that same thing in the classroom. Don't just do the activities in the classroom that will quickly get you through the lesson. It might take more time, it's messy. Social, emotional, multicultural as we're going, making sure it's not an add-on. I think the district and the teachers did an unbelievable job with technology becoming just embedded in what we do versus an add-on. There are many classrooms you go in where there's no technology going on in that moment, as it should be. And then times when some are on it, some are, maybe one's on it, maybe all are on it. Like, it should be embedded, and that's what we really want to do with the social, emotional, and multicultural. As we're building all these units, having them build it. Don't do your This is Multicultural Day. Build into your units all of these different viewpoints and using the windows and mirrors. Capturing those teachable moments. Sometimes we stop mid-course where we are because that's a teachable moment and this is what the teachers want, and we're going to try to model, we're going to follow the teacher like we ask them to follow the child. Do that same piece. And being really thoughtful and reflective through all of it. And we recognize part of the process is we have to do the big picture and the nitty-gritty. So we talk about these big driving things, but then we need those units, like the units we were showing you, that have and Carolyn's the queen of embedding all the links really nicely so that everybody has right there all of their resources. And living by our essential questions and developing them more for the classroom. And then we're also building this year, because we need a better way to share what we do have, we're building what is essentially an intranet, which will just be for the staff to be able, so they can feel comfortable putting assessments on there and putting all these resources on there, so that people are not reinventing the wheel all the time. And then also great ways to communicate. How do we now, what's our next steps? We do a great job with newsletters, sharing with parents X, Y, and Z, but what else do we need to share? And how do we have two-way communication? So our next steps really is obviously, as you heard today, you know, we have a lot to grow in the secondary level still as we're moving with this. Social studies with the new standards, we're now in that regional consortium. We have reps from the elementary, middle, and high school because the science was so powerful. We want to have that same experience as we go through the social studies. We're at the phase where we are aligning our power standards, like Lori said, to make sure they're reflected on our report cards. So it's super clear, and we'll start posting, we'll create a section on the website for parents to be able to see these are our power standards in each grade, in each content area. and then our report cards, making sure they're aligning with that. We're still really in the intensive work around phase 2, both with the MCIA work and our performance base, but also other ways to assess students. We need to do a better job internally for sharing, which is why we're building our intranet. We have hundreds of units from teachers, but we need to continue to build more, specifically at the secondary level. We need to do more piloting of open source versus textbooks, so I would say this is one of the things we've been slowest on as a district, which is okay, just like the classroom. There's gonna be things that work well and things that don't, but we wanna keep working on that. And as you know, on your upcoming agenda will be wellness, so that'll be a separate curriculum presentation on that. I know that was super short, so if you have lots of questions.
So Judy, any other comments you want to make before I open up for questions from the committee?
Just like to thank everyone for coming and for
Yeah.
your passion and your professionalism.
I'm kind of glad we heard this in the middle of the day rather than, in the evening on a Tuesday, particularly after maybe 30 minutes of public comment on some random issue, so everybody's sort of fresh and paying attention. Thank you very much. Who wants to go first with questions or comments for our presenters today?
I do have a question.
Sure.
First of all, this is phenomenal work you guys are doing, and this is probably the most fun I've had at school committee in a long time watching what you guys are doing. It's not just looking at numbers, although I love numbers, but it's actually why you guys are here and why we're here is some of what you're doing. But of course, I want to get down to some of the nitty-gritty too. As you look at changing the curriculum, have you had an opportunity to look at the students who are going through the change themselves and seeing, I could imagine that the old curriculums worked well for some and worked okay for others and worked very poorly for a third group. The new curriculum ideally can work well for all, but do we see the same stratification? Does the new curriculum, if it worked, the old curriculum worked well for student A, does the new one also work well for student A? Do we see sort of any inversion that this was a kid who was really good at doing bubbles and really good at reading a textbook, and they're not so good at this, and how do we help those students, and not just the students who are now going to have an improvement because they weren't a bubble taker, they weren't a whatever?
Yep. So I'll answer and then anyone else jump in. My experience with it has been, yes, there are some students that just say, just tell me what to do. Just give me the, like that's, and some days we all feel like that. So there's definitely that piece that's more of a struggle when, sometimes it's like I say all the time, I make everybody get up and move in all my workshops and all this stuff. Sometimes I go to them and I'm like, please don't make us get up and move. That's part of what we all struggle with. So truthfully, yes, there is some struggle with that piece for some students. But also, the thing that I feel like is different as what we're changing and what we're doing now is that there's more choice built in. So if it isn't your thing, that you may have something else, and that it may not be your thing right now, but tomorrow may be your thing. So I feel like that's the difference in what we're seeing with the changes. And it's still not perfect. I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but it's trying to say it shouldn't be one size fits all, I think is the big theme.
And I would also add on to that a lot of the curriculum that we're using right now is really open to differentiation. And then also we as professional development presenters, we are modeling for teachers how to differentiate and how to use different instructional approaches and strategies with you as adults. So those teachers are taking away those techniques and strategies, and they're trying them in their classroom as well, so that we are able to find out what is your learning style, like what will work for different students, and how can we build in multimodal approaches so that everybody has an opportunity to learn.
And I have to say, I think that given where we are in the lens that we're looking at all of this, we're getting more student feedback than we ever have. We're constantly dipsticking, checking in. It's that social emotional umbrella that's really driving what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I have a follow-up to, first of all, big fan. I love all the work that you guys have been doing, and I love how thoughtful it is. and that while you understand the need to document and get these power standards that we're talking about, you're also letting the teachers take time to learn about the curriculum that they're going to teach rather than just handing them something as a script and say, go into the room and do this. Because I feel like the deeper the teachers understand the work and the more they believe in it, it's just going to pay off in spades for our kids. But I'm curious about, similar to Brian, particularly at the middle school and high school, and I know most of you are elementary, but as we move forward with this work, right now we have a division that comes in 7th and 8th grade where we have some honors classes and some college prep classes. Are we trying to keep our power standards the same for both of those classes as we move forward so that we're also offering kids flexibility to say, well, in 7th grade, maybe I wasn't ready for honors yet, but I am now in 8th grade? Or are we moving away from honors altogether? How do you see that moving forward?
So that's a great question. So yes, the power standards should be the same. But I think that's probably why we haven't made as much progress in some of those areas, because that's not everyone's philosophy. Again, I'm not shy, I'll say it, but that's, that doesn't mean that people own it or believe it themselves.
Right.
And I think we talk about this a lot, because that focus then becomes like on the change process and the comfort with, because honestly now, the way our courses are built, you can technically move levels later, but it's not conducive to you being successful the way that it's built. So that's just a honest assessment, and that we're not unlike many districts.
Right.
We're just comfortable owning it. So we have to find a way to bridge that philosophy of the distinction has to be so much between levels with the philosophy of that they all can do these things. None of the standards that we have are unreachable for any students, but sometimes we have to change our practices to scaffold and support and build in multimodalities and different ways to get at it. And so that's a lot of shifting and changing, because when you have had levels, as Judy is very fond of saying, it's just, it continues to perpetuate that, because I can just go with this group. I don't have to scaffold or think about these pieces. And truthfully, and again, because I'm not shy, I'm just going to say it, a lot of our students in those classes can't just go. It just appears that they can, because they're doing private tutoring and they're doing extra things and all these things to keep up with that. And that's part of, again, our overarching goal of the social emotional. That's like a hamster wheel you can't get off of, and that is not good for anyone's well-being. So the struggle becomes, again, in a district that can be very successful academically, the struggle becomes, how can we keep our high standards and let our students have these achievements that we know that it takes if they want to go to the Ivy League schools? And how can we balance that with what we know is good practice in the classroom? And that's frankly just our biggest rub, and it's just our challenge. And so we will work through it, but that's why some progress in some areas are slower than others. We don't have a good resolution to it yet. But we'll approach it. We'll bring in those UMass students in the lab who are doing the thing, and maybe they can help us come up with an answer.
I think also all of the staff that we have come from so many different areas and backgrounds, and all bring such different strengths. And so we have some people who are really strong in understanding the social emotional support, and some teachers who are really strong in understanding how to differentiate the same standard for different students. And I think when we bring those teams of people together, when we have multiple people thinking about different aspects of it, we do improve the way we teach it to our students and get to all different levels with the same power standard. So
And to follow up on Katie and Jim, I think it really highlights how important that math coordinator role is going to be. This is not something I've heard the first time. Just given the new research that's coming out in math learning and all of that, that's something I would suggest to our committee to look into it as a priority.
Do you see that as a K-5 position or as a K-12 position?
So that's interesting. I'm open to anything. I think that We don't like to count our chickens before, so I think a lot will depend on, as we all talk about budget and our two budgets. I think we can flesh that out more if there is an opportunity. We haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it because unless we have
The
the
wish list.
opportunity.
Mostly wishing about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mostly wishing about it. Thank you. And as we know, hope is not a strategy.
Susan.
Can I have a remote?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to come back to the idea of the intranet and everybody producing all of these wonderful materials and then sharing them. And your idea that the plane is in the air, and how great some of what you had up there looked to be, someone had worked very hard to get the standards and the lesson plans and the materials and the assessments and all in a very digestible, searchable, kind of usable form, user-friendly form. And I'm wondering if that becomes, that user-friendly form that has already been developed, I think, in English, language arts, that becomes a template for other disciplines, and/or would we be able to help you? Would it help you to have something that I think other districts do invest in a curriculum software that sort of has forms that you plug in all of these materials and then everybody can access. It is prepackaged in a way, but it's not prepackaged content-wise. I think it's just, it makes it, you're building the plane. This gives you wings and a cockpit to assemble. I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion because I snoop around online at what other districts are doing, and I see that and I think, would that make it easier for all of you guys and maybe streamline the process a little for you? Because it's very time intensive and it's exciting to hear about it. And it occurs to me that if this way is a little messier and a little more time consuming, but you're really kind of building innovation and flexibility into the whole process, so that when some new standards come out, some new frameworks come out, you'll say like, oh, well, we can deal with this. We know how to do this. I'm just thinking that maybe the software piece could help you. So keep that in mind. And then the other question I had was, and one of the areas you were talking about really focused for a moment on essential questions. And I'm wondering if that's something that we would find in all of the disciplines, having things guided by essential questions. Because I think that's what, in my experience, watching my kids with different courses and different teachers, I think that's really what that inquiry process is what really makes things happen and really makes things stick, rather than, oh, I'm going to memorize this set of flashcards and 3 weeks later not remember.
Yeah, I would say we're in process on that. Some areas have fleshed that out better than others as we're going. We actually have been talking about, would it be kind of cool to have a couple of essential questions across a whole grade, across all disciplines? Like, would it be cool to have, it's kind of becomes then your themes for the year that you tie into. So, but we're at the earlier stages of that, I would say, for that piece. We did look at the software piece, and it's cost prohibitive, but that's not truly the big reason why we thought that wasn't as useful. Many of the districts that use, there's two big ones that people use, many of the districts that use them are actually moving away from them. And we specifically sent our ITS out to talk to other districts. They're on listservs, but we also asked them to talk to other districts. Like Lexington's on when they're moving off of it. It's a lot of teacher input into a form that then they don't use on the regular basis. So a lot of people are now moving to using their Google, if they're a Google district, using their Google Docs. And one of the cool things that just came out this summer as we were working on the intranet, because the other thing we want is we don't want a bunch of things posted that we haven't vetted. So we don't want us saying this is, hey, every second grade teacher, here's a cool unit to use, which may not align with the new standards or may not be. So one of the things we set up this summer that'll be part of our intranet as we're building that is that we'll use team drives, and there's only one person who's in charge of that team. So, the science things that go up will go through Catherine before they go up. The literacy things that go up will go through Katie. And we'll all have our different roles that we're in charge of those pieces to make sure we're vetting that it's good published work that goes up as we're doing it. And honestly, the very best of all the embedded and all the things of the middle school ELA have done an outstanding job. But we are moving to modeling more like that. They may not be all as good as that, but modeling more like that of really embedding the pieces, because we didn't used to have that. We had it as attachments, but with the Team Drive now, we can have all those pieces that are linked through that, and you don't run into the problem I ran into, which is, oops, turns out Frida doesn't have access to that document, I gotta log in.
Right.
So then we have Teams, and the other thing that's super cool about it is it'll allow everybody to have different levels of access. So just like a Google Doc, you can write to it, you can edit it, you can comment. So on the Team Drive, you may have commentable ability to certain things, but other grades will just have viewing access to be able to view. So it's allowing us to really tier it's really like a security level for different things for us to go through. So we think, after much time of thinking and debating and how to do, we think that's where we're putting stuff up now. So we're trying to, it'll actually be a Google site that is, the security level will be based on, you have to be a Winchester PS member. So you all have those emails too. You'll be able to view the things as well. So any adult that has that address will be able to get in to see all that work.
And two things I would add to that is that we do have some common templates. So for example, we have the Understanding by Design. So any of us who run grad courses, that's the template we ask our
Everybody uses the
participants
same,
to
yeah.
use. And we share that out with all staff in the district as well. And the other nice thing about using the Google Drive is that it's a living document. So people can make these changes and really, once they've used it with their students and applied it and seen it in real life, they can make the adjustments so that other people can work with that living piece that doesn't become stale and dusty up on a shelf.
And we don't have to update the website.
And having worked with that level of software, implementing it, it is so bulky and awkward and time intensive that actually this more simple process is a lot easier, a lot more effective.
Oh, good. You're our test case.
I'm in charge.
Right. You're now an official consultant. Thank you.
And maybe we can afford the math coordinator too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. If we don't
There
have
you
to
go.
pay for the software.
So to steal Susan's expression, speaking of being time intensive, it's 1:30 and some members have a hard stop at 2. I've just have a couple of very quick questions. So in terms of, really directed to you, Jen, in terms of timing, when we talk through district goals, we've obviously completed the world language review in time to have some discussion around FY20 budgeting. But for most of our others, we talked about kind of FY21, 22 in terms of target, in terms of when a curriculum review would be really complete. Do you have a sense, this is both a question to you and maybe just frankly an expectation on my part, because we'll be talking about budgeting as early as next month, that I hope that as you're making your progress, that you're not waiting until it's finished if you're identifying a resource that has the budget implication.
Yep.
I really appreciate you had those slides that you all spoke to, because we're going to have some hard discussions, both in a yes and a no scenario for an operating override in the spring. It's important to know what those budget implications are for something for which there's really strong support, even if it doesn't ultimately make it into a budget supported by a yes vote. It's important that it makes it to, a presentation and discussion item, because then it's easier to tackle that in the next fiscal year. Perfect example is expansion of world language.
Yep.
So that got a lot of attention. Ultimately didn't make the cut, but we still identify that as a priority. So I hope we don't lose sight of that. Is that a reasonable sort of expectation to have?
Absolutely.
And then a question to you, Lori. When you talked about everyday math, a couple of things you said I love. Focusing on habits of mind and remembering that fast isn't the same thing as smart. But when you talk about everyday math, not necessarily aligning in K-5 with everything we want students to be able to do, triggers a bunch of questions for me, because I think we're kind of almost using a 2.0 version right now. I think there was an update a few years ago.
No, actually, we are on that, so we're where we should be.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've adopted that. This notion of the spiraling curriculum, we really jumped in with both feet 11 years ago, as I recall, and you were on that math program review at the time. Is it possible that at the end of a math curriculum review, we might even be looking to move away from everyday math? Is it too early to tell?
No, I think it's a great anchor.
Okay.
It has great parts, but again, if a person just picked up that book and went from the first lesson to the last lesson, there's going to be a whole lot missed in that real-world application. So it's just using it using it differently, but relying on your expertise and what you know about your kids and having the other resources to pull from. Because quite honestly, the way that it's set up, it's a great professional development tool as a teacher because it gives you the why behind things. The issue is that the teacher is always telling the kids why versus letting the kids discover that on its own. So we need more of a balance of that.
Okay, and so for the students who are saying, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not good at math, do you have a sense that that's a perception that's being created in elementary school that they bring with them to McCall? Or is that something that's kind of happening once they get to McCall? I mean, my question is where is the intervention sort of most needed? Does that make
Sometimes
sense?
before elementary school,
Yeah.
even.
It's
Sometimes the
society.
I mean, there's stuff happening at
kindergartners should come
home
in.
we don't have control over, but
Yeah, this isn't a
rolling.
Winchester issue, this is
Right.
a
Yeah,
much
it's-
larger,
Right,
it's
right,
just the way, it is in the world.
Right, and there are markers of it, so it's all along the path. So if you look at, there's been research studies on when people decide that they are mathematicians or scientists, and one of those markers is in elementary school, and there's another one though for middle school, like I'm interested in something that's a STEM field, but so there's a lot of kids who in 8th grade may be interested and then they fall out in high school, a lot of them girls, for various reasons. So there's a lot of research into that. So I think it does happen along the way, but definitely in elementary school. I mean, as a 5th grade teacher, I have my kids who I'm not good at math. I don't like math. I'm not good at math. And it's like, nope, like you are. You just don't know it by the end of the year. Let's talk about it,
And it's just the teachers, so in 1st grade, when you look at the way that the kids are assessed, let's say, that first unit test, are we really testing on math concept or are we testing their reading ability? And I would argue for many, it's their reading ability and so it's, again, taking the good stuff from there, making good judgment and using other resources to help you better understand what the kid knows and what direction you should be going in as a teacher.
There's also been a lot of work around math and growth mindset in general, so that's why we're incorporating a lot of that into, even simple things as at the beginning of the year, giving kids the opportunity to think, what do you like about math or what is hard for you and how can we move in that direction? So
And
setting
here's my
goals.
big plug, and we're not tracking, right? So it's heterogeneous because every single person in there is a mathematician and every single person in there has something to give to the party.
Right. Thank you very much. Judy, closing thoughts before we move on to what's next?
I think we're under a time crunch, so obviously a lot of work. Probably you're noticing the glaring absence of the high school directors here in this discussion. And clearly, we're going to feel additional pressure to document the curriculum at the high school for our NEASC. It's going to be required. And so trying to balance sort of getting the job done with doing it thoughtfully in the time period that we have is going to be a huge challenge for us. And I think we've got a great foundation at K-5. The ELA department in particular at the middle school is a shining star in this regard in terms of being in the middle piece. There have been some pockets of really great work at the middle school, but the high school is far behind in terms of addressing the kinds of things that you heard about today. And so we've really got to find a way to make that happen. And we don't have enough resources to do it all at the same time, clearly. And there are a lot of other content areas that could be sitting at this table, taking an hour or two talking about the things they're working on. Everybody's working hard to try to meet the needs of students, but the lack of resources and supporting personnel. I mean, one of the reasons our per pupil spending puts us in the bottom 15% is because even just a few years ago, these 3 people weren't even here. It was Jen, and it was the high school directors, and that was it. And these other districts have, probably have seen multiple people supporting these roles, doing a job-embedded PD and coaching and supporting curriculum renewal. And so it's a real need for us. And it's one of the asks in the budget for the override.
Can I make one last other plug here? We should keep in mind is that none of this work happens without professional development work. and that all these hours that we're talking about are not these people sitting in front of us, but it's the hours the teachers are putting in to do this work, and that they have to do this work when they're also working with kids. Because the only way to try things out that you've just learned is to be doing it while you're also teaching them too, but that takes time. And it takes professional development hours, and I just can't say enough about the amount of work you get done with the little time that you have to do it, so.
So thank you all very much. I'm going to ask we move on to the tech update. Jen, I'm going to step out for a moment. Don't wait on me. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good news, this is much, much shorter. Thank you guys so much. So I'm really giving like a kind of a overview. Please send me follow-up questions if you have them, or if you want me to come back with something else. This is just kind of, I guess, the state of the update, the state of where we are. So where we are right now, standard expectations in every classroom in terms of equipment. We expect that there's interactive boards or projectors in every classroom, student devices, a document camera at the elementary level, and a teacher device. So that's our standard across all of our classrooms. We expect that there's technology integration going on in every classroom, and it's not being used as an add-on, rather embedded in lessons as is appropriate. Clearly, like everything else, some classrooms more so than others that we've seen this, we're all on a continuum. It's one tool, the use of student devices. Like I said, sometimes we see none happening in a classroom at given times, and that's the way it should be. Safety, we're expecting everyone is embedding and or direct lessons on internet safety, digital footprint, digital citizenship. It's really nice when they're embedding as they go throughout the year. And collaboration, so that we're modeling and messaging that tech is a way to communicate and collaborate, not isolate. So there are occasional times that kids are doing things by themselves on their device, but mostly that's at home when they're on Google Classroom or doing their writing. We're expecting when they're using it in school, it's a collaborative tool and a communication tool. We have been really excited the past couple years. Again, thanks to our whole Powered Up initiative, we got the foundational pieces done. So we're really excited now that we're seeing lots of work with kinds of innovative and trying other things. And so we see a lot of students being able to use coding things now. They're doing the large read aloud interactive books. They're doing specialized programs on their iPads when needed. I feel like I'm talking fast, so stop me if you have something. So BYOD, so currently we're grades 5 to 10 in our district with BYOD. Next year we're going to grades 11 and 12. And each year we continue to gather feedback and refine how to improve our practices and our approach with how we're doing with our BYOD. What are the things we're piloting? So what are the kind of new things we're doing? So we're doing some innovative technology, particularly around trying to tie the science and math together, and with our specialized populations. So we're doing this really cool pilot this year where we tried to bring together the social emotional piece, so our partnership program at Morocco, with our innovative technology piece. And one of the things we've learned through our growth in social emotional is we love our peace places and our quiet places in classrooms when kids need to regulate or they need to work something out or whatever the case may be, that they go to this section. For our students that have social emotional disabilities or are in a highly escalated state, that the last place we want them to be is sitting with their feelings. Where we want to do is have them move into a cognitive space so that they're able to regulate and bring themselves back down so that they can deal with their feelings and emotions. So we're piloting in at every grade at Morocco for our partnership students. They have a home room that they are in part of the day at least. In each of those classrooms we are piloting a coding area, so that instead of going to the peace place or the quiet place, if you are completely dysregulated, that you go and you engage in the coding for a cognitive de-escalation, and then work on your emotional piece. So that's a really cool way we've tried to bring technology and social emotional together. So the teachers are getting trained on their equipment right now, and then we'll have that up and running. So we'll bring back some feedback on that. We're doing targeted supports. We continue to pilot and innovate with students with certain disabilities or specific needs, or something that we find out is a group of students that we could be helpful with something. So we're continuing to try new things in those areas. And we're also, as mentioned before, piloting some different software and open source materials and trying to do that with technology versus the textbook. So our funding for innovative work, back to our budget implications, right now, most of our innovative work is either coming from teacher grants to places like WIFI or John and Mary Murphy or other things that people are trying. And WIFI is still supporting, even though we kind of officially finished with Power Up, our student innovative grants, which is awesome. So the student ideas, they develop them. WIFI comes and meets with myself and like one or two other teachers. We make a decision on grants, and those are up and running in 3 weeks, usually is about the turnaround from when kids put them in. So those have been awesome. But one of the questions we have is how do we continue to fund going forward innovative and things that we're trying? Just in terms of assessments, just to let you know, this year for MCAS, all of our MCAS will be computer-based. So it'll be grades 3 to 10. Last year was grades 4 to 8. Truthfully, almost without a hitch. It was actually easier than the paper pencil. It was definitely easier for the administrators at the end.
Yes.
They loved that. The kids really had no issues through the process. So we have figured out logistics. We've got it pretty much down to a science, and now we're actually, next week we have a meeting where the high school is coming too, so that they learn from what we've already done with the others, because this will be their first year going
Do you
computer
have enough
based.
devices for the non-BYOD
Yes.
grades? Okay.
So we will, you may see some of us driving around town with things in our cars moving from building to building.
Oh, so there'll be reallocation from one
They
place
have
to another,
to
yeah.
through the testing. Right now, we're building our calendar that has everybody's days overlaid, so we know where those gaps are.
And you're supporting the third grade teachers
Mhm.
in that? Okay, cool.
They feel pretty comfortable with it. So, actually, the elementary have been our leaders for this, so that's been great. And it's also very helpful, as Judy talks about, having an ITS ask at the middle school with technology. It's been super helpful. We have the ITS at the elementary. This really helps us with this piece, and so that's been a kind of a gap at the middle school. And we use our computer-based for our EL students. We use computer-based assessments. We'll be going to year 3 of that, and that's been very successful as well. Again, I think the fears were from the adults more than the kids. They feel very, this
Always.
is their, they're natives to this technology, they're fine. So our biggest budget needs, infrastructure, servers, switches, access points, all of those, again, with Powered Up with Wi-Fi. That was our big foundation, but we can't, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm like the beating of the drum on this. This is when my persistence isn't a naturally good asset, but we cannot cut and we cannot underfund. It will just fall apart. Nothing will run that we have. Software costs, so we may see those increasing. We've been trying to make some choices. We've cut some things. We look at we do a data analysis every year of our use of different softwares. We get surveys out to the teachers. We work with small groups. We've done some cuts in order to maintain the things that we're piloting, but in the long run, if that's our investment, instead of textbooks, that we may need some more funding in software. Equipment, we have projectors that are 10, 11, 12 years old. So each year, we just wait until they die. That's how we replace them, and we're often, robbing Peter to pay Paul in the budget to try to figure out how to do those pieces. And it's really hard to run a classroom right now without those. So innovative technology, again, that's a big thing. And as I alluded to at the beginning, although I enjoy my many, many hats in this district, and although my ADHD likes having different projects, I would like not to be the tech director forever. You know I'm passionate about it. But I really think to take us to the next level, we need somebody whose role is dedicated to this. And although I feel like I do a decent job in this arena, I'm not dedicating the time that needs to go to this. And we need to move forward with having that support, really, if we can. I know it's always, I don't push for it each year because I know there's always choices that we have to make in the budget, but if we do get the override. So what are our next steps? What are things we're working on? We need to do a new tech plan. We will have input and feedback from all stakeholders. We'll use the latest research to try to figure things out. We'd like to collaborate with other districts and see what they're doing, and do an analysis of our own needs to figure out where our gaps are. What would be really helpful as a town if we start thinking of technology as a fixed cost, like a utility. We would never not pay the light bill. We should not skimp on our infrastructure. Again, tech director, 2 places on this presentation. We are expanding, like I said before, we're expanding our BYOD to grades 11 and 12 this year. And assessing and potentially expanding some of our pilot programs. If we find like those coding stations are very successful for our students, we want to be able to bring that to more places. And then just continuing to innovate. We never want to rest on our laurels with technology because it's such an access point for so many of our students that we want to be able to leverage that for their learning.
Thank you, Jen. Questions for Dr. Elanima?
Quick question.
Sure.
Please.
Grade 12, I believe, will never been a BYOD through that class.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate fixed costs for that first? Because grade 11 will have been BYOD in 8th
Yep.
grade, but
Yep.
not 12. Do you have an idea of what that cost will be, and do we want to have that while we're doing budget?
Yeah. So that's a good question. What has actually been happening, which has been a good saver for us, is our predicted expenses for BYOD supplements haven't been as high as we thought, because now people are just as anticipated, but we didn't want to get too hopeful. Parents now see this as a fixed cost. So we're getting more and more that provide themselves, and we supplement less. But we did do a quick little poll at the high school to try to figure out, because we knew we were going to grade 11, but didn't make sense also to move to 12. And what the teachers are reporting is, because they have the choice right now to do it if they want as a classroom, and the teachers are reporting that the students really already have the devices, so that this shouldn't be an issue. So
Great. Thank you.
fingers crossed.
Susan.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Just, expanding BYOD and starting in 5th grade, and just wondering, it's good. We're teaching the kids sort of by showing them how to do it at school, that technology is a tool
Yep.
that you use when you need. I'm wondering where you work on or develop their awareness of that too much technology is not good. And some of the things that they will encounter are designed to be sort of addictive.
Yep.
And it occurs to me, just sitting here and listening to all the exciting stuff that's going on, that maybe this is something that kind of overlaps with social emotional learning and wellness. So if you could, what are we doing on that?
Sure. Yeah, so again, back to the how instrumental the ITS roles are. So although they work directly with students every day,
Yeah.
they are a lot more in the kind of the coaching role for the teachers to really help them with that piece. And, you hear about all these exciting things. Very little of that involves students on devices for a lot of those things people have been talking about. So they talk a lot in the classrooms about, and I hear it all the time when I'm in devices away. This is a non-device time. And really trying to talk about, now we're going to do a hands-on. Now you're just reading with your partner. Now you're, so that they talk a lot about that's not supposed to be the driver of the classroom. And I think having Stacy in that coaching role now is even more helpful, that as she's working with classrooms and with teachers, saying when it's a good time to embed it and when it's, it's not. It's,
Stacy's the.
the social emotional coach
Okay.
for the elementary schools.
Okay. Good. That makes sense. Thank you.
But we definitely have room to grow in that area.
And maybe a little outreach to parents about how they talk about it with their kids too.
Yeah, I can't wait for
Yeah.
the tech director who will do a lot of that stuff. So yeah, that's definitely an area to grow too. That's something that's.
So before I turn to this side of the table, I wanted to just offer a parental anecdote that speaks to Susan's question. And it was a question I was going to bring to you as well about BYOD, even at the younger levels.
Yeah.
So in my household, I have a 3rd grader who's got weekly homework assignments that actually include like creating Google Docs. So she's not expected to bring a Chromebook to school, but she's doing it. And it's really exciting for a kid, again, with parental supervision, to create something from scratch, to submit it online, and within 15 minutes get feedback from your teacher. But to Susan, to your point, there's a sort of it presented in like a bingo format, right? A series of activities, create a Google Doc, read 15 minutes online. Another one is play a board game, read a book. So My sense of what I'm seeing just in our sort of Morocco land world of the third grade is a lot of balance coming home. I wanted to ask, so that was actually going to be the foundation of my question, which is, are we doing similar things in other elementary schools to get kids comfortable with, facile with the technology, so that when fifth grade comes and they're bringing the devices,
Yeah.
they're rocking and rolling?
Yeah. Yes, but to different degrees and in different ways.
Okay.
So I would say, you know, from classroom to classroom, but also each building's probably on a continuum of where they are with the pieces. But I do have to say most of our teachers are very comfortable integrating in some way now so that the students are comfortable.
Thank you.
Yep.
Zena or Michelle?
I'm all set.
All right, thank you very much for this, Jen. Really appreciate it. Oh, I had one other question. Do we have a sense, you talk about textbook cost and then software cost as we start to back off more and more our investment in textbooks?
Yep.
Do we have any idea if there's ever a one-to-one correlation? So money saved, cost avoidance from not buying a new textbook series, does that afford the software needed, if you will, to replace it?
Yep.
Is it too early to really get a sense?
Well, the software is way cheaper, but the truth is, with our budget, that we've just avoided buying for so long that there's nothing to replace. There is no textbook money really in the budget, so so software's a cost.
Yeah.
Just went, but.
We'll do it again
Sorry.
if we have to.
I think Catherine left one of her bugs here. It was
She brought 5 bugs.
At
Five.
least 5.
now everybody scratch. Just
At least 5 living bugs.
Yes.
So,
yeah. I don't know. I went like that.
You know where Alan
free to
stands
hit
with
me
nature.
again. So,
It
To
just
look
doesn't come
at.
in the house.
Jen, thank you very much.
Sure.
In the interest of time, we're going to postpone the FY19 budget realignment to our next school committee meeting, because I know some folks have to run out of here in 7 minutes. Can I ask either of Susan or Judy a couple of minutes on an update on McCall Phase 2 and where we stand on ad alternates? You guys had a meeting last night.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Very quickly. We're trying to come down to the wire to set the schedule to set this out to bid. We want to be sure that the bids come in at or below the budget that we've set. And so because of that, 3 things that we'd like to include in the project, we have listed as additions alternates to the bid. And they need to be in a certain order so that you can't sort of skip and take the third.
I know I said go ahead, but I'm just thinking, you can interject here
Yeah,
at this
yeah.
point, that
Go
we
ahead.
did do some value engineering. That, some items that the architects just, identified as things you could kind of streamline, you could leave this less, you could use a different material or whatever. And that did save us some $100,000.
In other words, that brings down the cost of what's in the base.
The projected cost, right?
So we did do that.
Okay.
So we did do that. So the 3 things that is currently listed and had been voted by EFPBC for ad alternate are, and their approximate costs are, hydronic baseboard system to allow supplemental heating for the 6 classrooms. The system, the original system designed should be adequate for most of the year, but there is a perception that near the windows it can be drafty and cold, and we want students and teachers to feel comfortable, and that all of the new systems are being designed with the baseboard heating, which is evidently easier to control and more reliable than the kind of heating that was proposed for the addition. So so there's a $200,000 cost for that. There are some offset savings because of the kind of boiler, gas versus electric,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Cost to operate, yeah.
And cost to operate. So that's an ad alternate, but that is number 2 on the ad alternate list. The first,
One.
That's 2?
That's two.
last night voted as
Oh, so the order has changed.
Number 2.
Okay. Okay.
The first alternate is the teacher workspace. The
Oh.
projected cost for the teacher workspace is $68,000. So realistically speaking, it's very likely that this would be picked up in the major project. If it is not, it is something I think we could address with other budget sources if we really came down to the wall and weren't able to accomplish this either through contingency monies or through the regular project. But it was, at my request, because this is an educational program decision, I asked it to be made to be the first alternate, and they agreed.
I appreciate that.
The third alternate is the existing cafeteria flooring, which has been damaged by the tables. needs replacement. The cost for that is $73,000. So that's the projected cost. So that's the third adult as part of this project. Again, has to be done at some point. Would ideally be done as part of this project since there's new cafeteria flooring going in the addition to the cafeteria. But if we really have a very tight budget, it's something that we'd have to provision for in some other way. So those are the three voted by EFPBC. The good news is, I think, that we've identified some value engineering kind of savings, and the contingency is quite high at this point, and so we think we're almost ready to send it to bid, and we think, depending on the climate and culture out there, that we have a good chance of getting some contractors to work with us on these.
So we still have untouched an owner's contingency of between $300,000 and $380,000. I think we have a construction contingency of around
$340,000.
What's that?
I think it's $340,000.
$340,000, and then with the construction contingency, it all adds up to around $1 million of contingency that's
Right.
untouched.
Right.
Do you have a sense, only because we're seeing such high escalation rates in construction right now, is there a sense of timing in terms of preparing these bid documents? Is EFPBC waiting on something to green light to go? When would we want to be bidding?
So we have a scheduling meeting next week to talk about both bidding and sort of the contract management, construction schedule, laydown schedule. So Meg and I and some other people will work on that. We should be ready within 3 weeks to send this to bid. That doesn't put us in a great position in terms of the holidays. So it's very likely we'll send it to bid right after, in early January, which leaves us plenty of time for a summer construction start.
And then in terms of project delivery, because we had set aside, I think, $250,000 for whatever it would be, right? Whether we would hire an independent project manager or we do a full-time clerk of the works, there's some significant dollars there. Has there been more discussion around how the project is going to be delivered and managed? And is that an EFPBC conversation? Is that a town hall conversation? Does the school committee need to participate in that?
Yeah, I don't think the school committee needs to participate in
I
that.
think this conversation that is set up for next week is the beginning of that. Maybe,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
might
we'll make some
do it,
recommendations
so.
around that.
Good. Any questions from folks on the call? Thank you for your continued work.
I apologize.
What's that?
I
No,
apologize.
go
I
ahead.
do have a question about the teacher workspace.
Can I
Yes.
just say, workspace? Why do we have to call it that? Are they,
Whatever.
can they have
Teacher
10?
rest space.
Can they have 10 minutes? Yeah. Okay.
Teacher space.
I'm sorry.
Teacher
Okay.
space.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
I just want to express, I'm kind of disappointed that that's an ad alternate. I feel like that's something we promised the voters
It is.
as far as
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that would be in the project.
important.
So I feel like adding it, I'm thrilled that it's number one ad alternate, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled that we could find another way to fund it. But it'd be kind of, it feels a little like if we only had a two-story edition and said, well, it's an ad alternate to put us another story on or something.
Right.
Feels
In a-
little cheating.
In a project like this, I think, that's self-funded, that's so tightly budgeted, we weren't able to identify another $80,000 that we could easily remove from the project. Anything else we remove from the project would mean a major change, like not opening the public toilets downstairs or those locker rooms. We really looked very carefully at everything. So identifying that as an ad alternate doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means it may not get fully funded from the project. Because we are confident that the planned changes in that space can be accomplished either through the project or some combination of building rental funding. And so the only reason it's there is because the other things that would need to be removed in order to include it are just not acceptable. And so that's really what it comes down to. This is not, and we are, and again, we still have a significant amount in contingency, but this is kind of a messy project because a lot of utilities in that area and the place that
There's another ant on you right
the
there.
addition- oh, it's
On your
probably
front.
the same one.
No, it's on, no, it just fell down on your.
You might
onto
wanna
your
stand
pants.
up and just
You might
take a
want-
look.
It was an ant.
I think it's a spider.
All right, did
Now
she
we're
bring
go
in
see
whatever she
Catherine.
picked up with living things? This is like a continuation of our curriculum
Anyway.
discussion.
Well,
Yeah.
what Judy was saying is that the location where the addition is going has a lot of underground utilities
Right.
Yeah.
in it. And there's a certain level of anxiety at the EFPBC about going into the ground and digging this stuff up. And
Yep.
Moving things.
Once we get that done, I think we will we'll be more secure in our estimation and more secure about what it's really going to cost. So
Right,
at that
that's what I
point
was
in
trying
my-
to say.
No,
Yeah,
and I
thank
yeah.
you.
And I totally appreciate that. I'm disappointed when I see something that I feel like it's part of the core of what we promised.
Right.
Hydronic baseboard, we didn't promise, and we always promised that cafeteria floor would be if we could muster it. But we
Right.
did promise
Yep.
the teacher space.
Right.
And can I just offer, on that note, not that it would necessarily pay for the cost of the teacher space. Remember, the master plan calls for 8 classrooms at McCall. We're providing 9. And the reason is, it's no savings to go 2-2-1, so we're going
Right.
2-2-2.
Right.
And for those who say, I think your projections are too low, and we'll talk about this somewhat tonight at town meeting, we say, well, we actually have an extra classroom. But to be fair, the master plan doesn't call for that classroom. So not that there would be a huge savings, I'm not about to suggest we don't fit up the 6th classroom. There's cost in things like the FF&E, the furniture, the equipment, the technology. That might be something Judy and Susan, the committee, might consider. I mean, we certainly have no expectation we would need that 9th classroom, day 1, fall of 2020. And that's the kind of thing we could certainly come back if we needed to get the furniture, buy the technology, especially if there's money still in the bank. That's an expense that's a little easier than retrofitting, the teacher's
Just to
space.
be transparent, the 3 new classrooms that we put into place in phase 1 are now occupied by teachers because that's a team area, freeing up two special ed rooms went into other classrooms. As the teachers moved downstairs, freed up 3 classrooms elsewhere.
Okay.
2 of those occupied by the special education program that was in the library, taking up half the library.
Yeah.
1 is now a teacher workroom for now.
For now.
So I just want to be sure that everyone understands that
They have
we will
space.
provision for teacher workspace and make that happen. I don't want to send any signals that that's not a high priority.
Right.
So some folks have to run out of the room very shortly, myself included. So we will come back to school committee norms and protocols in another meeting, but I would ask you to review the materials in the packet. I would also just like to share, and this is hot off the press, an update on EFPBC vacancies. What I've got asterisks for there down the left side is we actually have 5 vacancies technically on the EFPBC in terms of either folks who've resigned or terms that have come due. And so I've tried to summarize this for you. Interestingly, we have work for our policy subcommittee because we have a policy on school buildings that describes the EFPBC. We found a disconnect. In fact, the charge of town meeting to the EFPBC in terms of the architect role requires the architect be licensed in Massachusetts. That is not a requirement for the engineers. So we have a higher standard, if you will, for architects. School committee, school committee, thanks. School committee policy, our school committee policy FB does not pick that up. The school committee policy simply says registered engineer and registered architect. On the one hand, we could change the school committee policy. On the other, I'd like this committee to begin thinking about whether that's even appropriate. Why should we have a higher standard for architects than engineers? The idea of simply being the architect on the EFPBC, if you follow me, is not stamping drawings, right? So all you're looking for is someone who meets the requirements of a registered architect, meets the requirements of a registered engineer. So for instance, it makes no difference if an engineer is registered in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Connecticut, Texas, they're still able to bring to bear sort of the professional background. This was a disconnect the clerk was not aware of till this morning. So I'd like the committee to sort of think about that. That may be a change we might want to actually propose. So there are 5 positions open. There are 2 that involve the school committee. 1 is sitting to my right because Susan is our school committee appointee. She has already indicated she's willing to continue to serve. She is, and I think it's great because she's familiar with the McCall project and the master plan. The other is the joint appointment that Charles vacated. So I think we were trying to figure out what the real requirement is in terms of whether you're licensed in Massachusetts or not, because that affects who may or may not be interested in the position. We have some architects in town who are just not registered in the state. So waiting to sort of, if that makes sense, figure that out. So to at least feel like we got something accomplished, I would welcome a motion to reappoint Susan retroactively to March of 18, which is when her term expired, only because you are serving and we're already on record that you are our appointee to the EFPBC and you're willing to serve.
It's not about your
And,
position.
and we could communicate that back to the clerk and
That has
begin to
been
sort of,
raised by the
to clean
chair.
this up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be nice.
Yeah, Zena, you got a
I
question?
have a question in terms of our school committee making a proposal to the select board of appointing a new chair to the EFPBC so that we can have more stability and a more modern approach to some of our sustainability efforts in terms of our new buildings. So I don't know if that's via emotion, if that's something personal, but I would,
Yep.
I would like us to really consider making,
So I appreciate that. The select board doesn't choose the chair of the EFPBC, but I appreciate
Who does?
the
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 team?
EFPBC.
well, then.
So,
then
but
that position.
I appreciate where you're coming from, very much.
Well,
And
maybe the policy subcommittee could look into how the chair of the EFPBC, how that works. Just, is it's not appointed, so how does that work?
and the only other
It's
context I
not,
can
and it's
offer.
not in, it's not in the town meeting vote either.
Right.
don't
All I
think.
can offer, Zena, is related to that, is we did confirm a couple of years ago that because town meeting created the EFPBC, not town charter, they are obligated to follow Robert's rules. So Robert's rules has guidance, if you will. They have rules on things like committee leadership and succession and so forth. So, that is there, if you will.
So that term is up in 1 year. Who fills that particular position?
That term is up in March of 2020,
Okay.
and that is a select board appointment.
All right. Thank you.
So, but I will note, for instance, Todd Kosterman, who I've enjoyed kind of watching in the debate about things like solar and the McCall project, seems really engaged. I don't know that he's looking to ride off into the sunset, but his term is one of those that expired when Susan's did. So, the town clerk is going to reach out to the moderator and some of these individuals simply to say, do you wish to continue to serve? At the end of the day, it's the moderator's decision whether to sort of reappoint or post. But I just I figured this was a good opportunity because the more I looked into this, I found more and more information that I didn't think I was going to find.
It's our job to appoint Charles's
It's
successor.
actually a joint appointment, which
Okay.
is a little more tricky. And the way we've done this in the past, Michelle, is when there are individuals who have an interest in serving, who are qualified to serve, our committee and the select board has certainly entertained that joint appointment. There have been times when really no one was sort of coming forward, and so it was decided to post for the opening. It's really the appointing authority's decision to post for the opening. So the select board has done that in the past, the moderator has done that in the past, but for a joint appointment, it typically involves sort of some communication. We may have individuals in town who are approaching me as the chair of the school committee, or Lance as the chair of the select board, and then we had this sort of conundrum because how we describe the qualification for the architect position is different between what's in the clerk's office and what's in our school committee policy. So that's something for us to look into. And I would actually volunteer, because we don't have the Massachusetts registration requirement for engineers, I don't know that we need it for architects either. There's no obvious reason to require that. To say an architect, or for that matter, an engineer needs to be registered in a state is because you're expecting that person to sign and seal drawings, and that's not the job of the members of the EFPBC. Those are the architects and engineers who are working for the town. But because we have discussed this previously, that Susan is, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'm just
so-
gonna move for Susan to be.
Yeah, I would welcome a motion to appoint Susan as the school committee representative retroactive to March of 18.
I move it.
Second.
So, do we need to, or can you appoint?
No.
Isn't the
No.
chair, because I know the appointment from FinCom to EFBBC is, I believe, by the chair's appointment, and I know that a lot of appointments are by the chair. I just.
I believe this one is a committee
Okay.
appointment.
Perfect.
So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Susan. I'm going to pass on a chair report for a later meeting. Anything, Judy, you want to say, hot and pressing here?
Nothing. Just want to commend Michelle. Michelle and I went down to MASS, MASC, and presented yesterday on mindfulness as part of a panel, and it was a good experience. Yes.
Thank you for
Interesting to
doing
hear
that.
what other districts are doing.
Right.
Okay. Future agenda items are as they are shown. Next regular meeting date on the 20th. We'll see everybody tonight at town meeting.
Can I just ask, and we can talk about when, but can we put a vote on solar at the high school?
Yeah, so I saw an email
Yeah,
from
just
Susan
in the-
McPhee, the
in the future.
EFPBC acted on that last night. I mean, obviously, before we vote, we need a PPA, so something to vote, a power purchase
Yeah,
agreement.
that's all been
Yeah.
negotiated. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, because it was kind of teed up from before, so yeah.
Okay,
But we need to review it, is what you're saying.
yeah. Well, we need to get it, and then get it in the
That's good.
packet. And
Okay.
I said to Susan last night, happy to do it so long as it's after fall town meeting, because we're sort of focused on fall town. But it'll be quick. I think we're going to do this in 2 sessions, actually. Yeah. So it may work with our school committee schedule. But yes, future agenda item, high school solar, absolutely. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be around this afternoon, let me know
Champions.
if you want to
Sherba, should I leave the clicker here?
send your presentation in case I catch anything.
Yeah.
Well, I actually we got a text from Peter during the meeting. He's okay.